I was 24 when this happened, and even now I still don't like staying anywhere remote because of it. This was back in late October. My girlfriend Emma and I booked a weekend trip to northern Colorado because we both needed a break from work. We found this small cabin resort online that looked perfect. It wasn't a hotel exactly. It was more like a group of old wooden cabins spread through the woods near a lake. The website advertised it as peaceful and private. No city noise, no crowds, just nature. That should have been my first warning. The place was about 40 minutes from the nearest town. Once we got off the highway, the roads became narrower and darker until eventually it felt like we were driving into nowhere. Trees everywhere. Barely any streetlights. Barely any houses. Emma loved it immediately. She kept saying things like, "This is exactly what I needed." I tried to feel the same way, but something about the area made me uneasy from the start. Maybe it was how isolated it felt. Maybe it was because the cabins were spread far enough apart that you couldn't really see other people unless they were outside. When we finally arrived, the office was empty except for an older guy behind the counter watching football on a tiny TV. He barely looked at us while checking us in. I remember him saying, "Y'all are in cabin 14. Then he paused for a second before adding, "Keep your doors locked at night." He said it casually, like it was normal advice, but it stuck with me. Emma laughed afterward and said he was probably trying to sound mysterious for tourists. I laughed too, but honestly it bothered me more than I admitted. Cabin 14 sat near the edge of the property close to the woods. There was a dirt path behind it leading toward the lake. The cabin itself looked nice enough. Small living room, fireplace, tiny kitchen, one bedroom. Everything seemed fine that first evening. We made food, watched movies, drank a little wine, and sat outside under blankets looking at the stars. It actually felt peaceful for a while. Around midnight, Emma went inside to shower while I stayed outside for another few minutes scrolling through my phone. That's when I noticed someone standing near the trees. At first I thought it was another guest walking around in the dark, but then I realized the figure wasn't moving. It was just standing there, watching the cabin. The person was far enough away that I couldn't make out details, but I could tell it was a man. Tall, wearing dark clothes. I stared for maybe 10 seconds before finally calling out, "Hey!" No response. The figure slowly stepped backward behind the trees and disappeared. I immediately went inside and locked the door. Emma could tell something was wrong right away. I told her there was someone outside near the woods. She looked nervous for maybe 2 seconds before trying to rationalize it. "It's probably another guest." "Then why was he just standing there?" I asked. She didn't really have an answer for that. Still, we tried brushing it off and eventually went to bed. I don't know how long I slept before I woke up to knocking. Not loud knocking either. Soft knocking. 3 slow taps against the front door. I opened my eyes immediately. Emma was asleep beside me. Top. I checked my phone. 3:11 a.m. For a second, I honestly thought maybe I imagined it. Then it happened again. 3 slow knocks. I quietly got out of bed and walked into the living room. The cabin was completely dark except for moonlight coming through the curtains. The knocking stopped. I stood there listening. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps outside. Slow footsteps moving across the wooden porch. Every hair on my body stood up. I looked through the side window near the door, trying not to make it obvious. At first, I didn't see anything. Then suddenly a face moved into view from the side of the porch. A man, middle-aged maybe, pale skin, wet hair, white eyes. He was smiling. Not a normal smile either. The kind where somebody looks genuinely wrong in the head. I jumped backward so fast I almost fell. The man stayed outside staring through the glass. Then he slowly raised one finger to his lips like he was telling me to be quiet. I yelled for Emma immediately. The second she sat up, the porch footsteps started moving away fast. By the time we turned the outside light on, nobody was there. Emma started panicking after seeing how serious I was. I grabbed the fireplace poker and checked every window while she called the front office. Nobody answered. That somehow made things worse. We barely slept after that. Every tiny sound outside made us tense up. At one point around 5 a.m., I heard what sounded like someone walking behind the cabin near the bedroom wall. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow footsteps through dead leaves. Back and forth, like somebody pacing. I wanted morning to come more than anything. When daylight finally hit, we packed immediately. Before leaving, I decided to walk around outside to see if there were footprints near the porch. There were. Clear, muddy boot prints leading from the woods directly to our cabin. But what really terrified me was where they ended. Not at the porch. At the bedroom window. Whoever that man was had apparently been standing directly outside our bedroom while we slept. Emma almost started crying when she saw them. We drove straight to the office. This time the old guy was there drinking coffee. I told him somebody had been outside our cabin all night. I expected surprise or concern. Instead, he just sighed, like he was annoyed. Then he asked, "Did he try talking to you?" That question made my stomach drop. I asked him what he meant. He hesitated before saying there was a homeless man who sometimes wandered through the woods near the property. Supposedly, he used to work maintenance there years ago before something happened. The old guy claimed the man mostly just scared guests and never actually hurt anyone. I remember getting angry and asking why the hell they still rented cabins if they knew someone was sneaking around at night. He just kept repeating, "He usually leaves people alone." Usually. That word stayed stuck in my head the entire drive home. About 2 weeks later, Emma got an email from the resort apologizing for the uncomfortable experience. Attached was a partial refund. But there was something else attached too. A security photo. Apparently after we reported the incident, they checked an old maintenance camera near the woods. The image showed our cabin around 3 a.m. You could clearly see a figure standing beside the bedroom window, looking inside. What still bothers me is how close he was. Close enough that if I had opened the curtains a little more, his face probably would have been inches from mine. We never went back there again. And ever since that night, I always check windows before sleeping anywhere unfamiliar. 3 years ago, my best friend Marcus and I drove from Arizona to Nevada for a music festival in Las Vegas. We were both 25 at the time and honestly just wanted a weekend away from work. The festival itself was fine. Loud music, huge crowds, drinking, people partying nonstop. Pretty standard Vegas stuff. The problem started at the hotel. Because we booked late, almost every decent hotel near the strip was sold out or insanely expensive. We ended up finding this older hotel about 15 minutes away from the main area. The reviews were mixed. Some people said it was underrated. Others called it creepy. We should have listened to the second group. The lobby already felt wrong when we checked in. Dim lights, old carpet, hardly anybody around. The woman at the front desk barely spoke to us. She just handed us keycards and said, "Second floor, room 208. The elevator smelled horrible, like cigarettes and mildew. Marcus joked that it looked like the kind of hotel people disappear in. At the time, I laughed. Later, I wished we had just left immediately. The first night was mostly normal. We got back around 1 a.m. exhausted and drunk and passed out almost instantly. Then around maybe 4 in the morning, I woke up because I heard somebody laughing. At first I thought it was outside in the hallway. Then I realized it sounded closer. Inside the room, I opened my eyes slowly. The bathroom light was on, and I could see someone standing near the bathroom door. A woman, long dark hair covering most of her face, wearing what looked like a white hotel robe. At first my sleepy brain thought maybe Marcus brought someone back while I was asleep. Then the woman turned her head toward me. Her face looked wrong. Not bloody or monstrous or anything like that. Just deeply unnatural. Her smile was too wide. Way too wide.
He instantly sat upright.
The second I moved, she stepped backward into the bathroom. I yelled Marcus's name. He woke up confused and immediately turned the lamp on. The bathroom was empty. Completely empty. Marcus got annoyed and thought I was messing with him. I almost convinced myself I dreamed it. Almost. Until Marcus suddenly asked, "Why's the bathroom light on?" Neither of us remembered turning it on before bed. That creeped me out badly, but we tried letting it go. The next day we stayed out most of the afternoon and night. We didn't want to spend time in the hotel anyway because the place felt depressing. When we returned around midnight, something immediately felt off. The TV was on. We both clearly remembered turning it off before leaving. Marcus actually checked the room thinking maybe housekeeping came through, but nothing looked cleaned or touched. Then we noticed something else. The bathroom door was closed. Not weird normally, except we had left it open. Marcus started getting uncomfortable too at that point. He walked over and pulled the bathroom door open. Nothing inside, but written across the mirror in foggy fingerprints were the words, "Don't look under the bed." I wish I was making that up. Marcus immediately backed away swearing. I remember my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Neither of us had showered recently enough to fog the mirror ourselves. Those fingerprints looked fresh. Marcus kept insisting somebody had entered the room somehow. I called the front desk furious. The same woman answered. When I explained what happened, she sounded weirdly calm. Too calm. She said maintenance would come check the room. Nobody ever came. At that point Marcus wanted to leave immediately, but it was almost 1 a.m., we were exhausted, and finding another place last minute during a festival weekend was nearly impossible. So against our better judgment, we stayed. Big mistake. Around 3 a.m., I woke up again. This time because I heard breathing. Slow breathing. Directly beside me. For a second I couldn't move. I slowly turned my head toward the side of my bed and saw hair hanging down from the mattress. Someone was underneath my bed. I froze completely. The breathing stopped. Then very softly, a woman's voice whispered, "I know you're awake." I have never moved faster in my life. I jumped out of bed screaming. Marcus woke up instantly while I stumbled backward toward the door. Marcus looked under the bed. Nothing there. Absolutely nothing. At that point, we were fully panicking. We grabbed our bags and left everything else behind. When we got to the lobby, nobody was at the front desk. Not even the woman from earlier. We threw our keycards onto the counter and left. Neither of us spoke much during the drive to another hotel. The next morning, Marcus realized he had left his expensive headphones behind in room 208. He called the hotel asking if housekeeping found them. The man who answered sounded confused. He said nobody had stayed in room 208 the previous night because that room was closed for renovation. Marcus thought he was joking. He explained we literally slept there. The employee went silent for a second before saying, "Sir, room 208 has been locked for months." Marcus hung up thinking it was some kind of prank. But later that day, curiosity got the better of us. We drove back to the hotel, and I swear on everything this is true. There was no room 208. The hallway skipped directly from 206 to 210. Even now, I can't explain that. Maybe somebody at the hotel set the whole thing up somehow. Maybe we were more drunk and exhausted than we realized. Or maybe something else happened there. I don't know. What I do know is this. Ever since that night, I never sleep on hotel beds without checking underneath first. I was 27 when this happened, and out of every creepy thing I've experienced in my life, this is the one story I still think about almost every night before I go to sleep. This happened in Nevada, about an hour outside Las Vegas. Back then, my girlfriend Kayla and I had been together for almost 3 years. We were both burned out from work and wanted one quiet vacation before the holidays started. Neither of us liked crowded tourist stuff very much, so instead of staying directly in Vegas, we booked an Airbnb way outside the city in a small desert town. The listing looked amazing online. It was this modern black house sitting completely alone out near the desert hills. Huge windows, long dirt driveway, fire pit outside. The description kept using words like private, peaceful, and perfect escape from the city. That should have been a red flag. The drive there already felt unsettling. Once we left the main highway, everything became emptier and emptier. Gas stations disappeared. Street lights disappeared. There were stretches where we drove 10 minutes without seeing another car. Kayla loved it. She kept taking pictures through the window saying things like, "This looks like a horror movie." I laughed at the time. I wish I hadn't. We arrived just before sunset. The house honestly looked beautiful in person. Black exterior walls, huge glass windows facing the desert, and mountains way off in the distance. There weren't any nearby neighbors except one tiny trailer maybe half a mile away. The Airbnb host never met us. Just sent a message with a gate code and instructions. Inside, the house looked exactly like the photos. Clean, minimalist furniture, concrete floors, expensive kitchen appliances, one long hallway leading to 2 bedrooms. There was also a detached garage behind the house. That part matters later. The first evening was completely normal. We ordered food from the only nearby restaurant, watched movies, drank wine, and sat outside looking at the stars. The sky out there was unbelievable. No city lights anywhere. Around midnight, Kayla went to shower while I stayed in the living room watching YouTube on my phone. That's when I noticed movement outside. At first I thought it was just reflections in the glass. Then I realized someone was standing near the edge of the property, far out near the desert brush. Just standing there, watching the house. I sat up immediately. The figure looked tall and thin, wearing dark clothes. Too far away to make out details, but definitely a person. I remember waiting for them to move. They didn't. They just stood there completely still. After maybe 20 seconds, I got up and walked closer to the window. The second I did, the figure slowly walked backward into the darkness until I couldn't see them anymore. That instantly put me on edge. Kayla came out of the bathroom while I was still staring outside. She asked what was wrong. I told her I thought somebody had been standing outside watching the house. She immediately walked to the window too, but by then there was nothing there. She tried reassuring me. It's probably just someone hiking or something. Hiking in the desert at midnight? I asked. She didn't really answer that. Eventually we locked the doors and went to bed. I had trouble sleeping after that. Every little creak in the house made me listen harder. Around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up because I heard a metallic sound outside. Clang. Like metal hitting metal. I opened my eyes immediately. Then I heard it again. Clang. It sounded close. Very close. Kayla was asleep beside me. I quietly got out of bed and walked to the bedroom window. The backyard lights were off, but moonlight lit up part of the property. That's when I saw the detached garage door slightly open. I froze. I specifically remembered it being closed earlier. I kept staring at the opening, expecting somebody to step out. Nothing happened. Then suddenly I heard another sound behind me inside the house. A soft footstep. I spun around so fast my chest hurt. Nobody there. The hallway outside the bedroom was dark and empty. I stood there listening hard. Silence. At that point, I honestly thought maybe paranoia was getting to me. I checked the bedroom door lock, then went back to bed. I barely slept after that. The next morning, I told Kayla about the garage door. We went outside together to check it. The door was fully closed now. No sign it had ever been open. I almost started convincing myself I imagined it. until I noticed footprints near the side of the garage. Fresh footprints in the dirt. Not ours. Large boot prints. Kayla saw them too. That changed her attitude immediately. The tracks circled around the back of the garage and disappeared into the desert. We both got uncomfortable after that, but neither of us wanted to ruin the trip over probably nothing. So we stayed. Huge mistake. That afternoon we drove into town for groceries. The town itself felt weirdly empty. Hardly anyone around. At one point while we were inside a small gas station, I noticed an older man staring at us from near the coffee machines. Not glancing, staring. The second I looked directly at him, he smiled. It wasn't friendly either, just strange. He had pale skin, dirty gray hair, and one cloudy eye. I remember him asking, "You folks staying up on Copper Ridge Road?" My stomach immediately dropped. That was the road our Airbnb was on. I asked how he knew that. He shrugged and said, "Not many outsiders come through here." Then he walked away, laughing quietly to himself. I didn't tell Kayla how badly that bothered me because I didn't want to scare her more. But the entire drive back, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night things got worse. Around 11 p.m., we were sitting outside near the fire pit when we heard something out in the darkness. At first it sounded like footsteps crunching slowly through dirt. Then it stopped. Kayla grabbed my arm immediately. "Did you hear that?" Before I could answer, we heard it again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Definitely footsteps, circling somewhere beyond the light. I grabbed the flashlight from inside and pointed it toward the desert. Nothing, but I knew somebody was out there. You could feel it. That horrible feeling of being watched. We went back inside and locked everything. About an hour later, while brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I noticed movement outside the hallway window. Someone walked past. Fast. I nearly dropped my toothbrush. I ran into the living room and looked outside. Nobody there. But then one of the motion lights suddenly turned on near the garage. Then another farther out near the driveway. Something was moving around outside the house. Kayla started panicking immediately. She kept asking if we should call the police. I honestly didn't know what to do. Part of me felt stupid calling 911 over shadows and footsteps. Then we heard 3 knocks. Not at the front door, at the back glass door. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Every hair on my body stood up. Kayla whispered, "Oh my God." Neither of us moved. Then a man's voice spoke from outside. Calm, almost friendly. "Sorry to bother you folks." I remember my heart dropping into my stomach hearing an actual voice. The man continued, "My truck broke down nearby. Mind if I use your phone?" The thing is, none of it sounded right. There hadn't been headlights, no engine sounds, nothing. And who walks through the desert to a random isolated house after midnight? I didn't answer, neither did Kayla. For maybe 30 seconds there was silence. Then the man spoke again, still calm. "I can see you standing there." That terrified me because he was right. We were both frozen near the kitchen where he could probably see our silhouettes through the glass. Kayla started crying quietly. I grabbed a kitchen knife and yelled, "Leave right now or I'm calling the cops." For a few seconds there was silence again. Then the man laughed softly, not loud, just a small laugh like he found the situation amusing. Then footsteps moved away from the house. We immediately called 911. The dispatcher sounded concerned, but because of how remote the property was, deputies were far away. So for almost 40 minutes, we sat there in complete fear waiting. Every tiny sound outside made us jump. At one point, we heard footsteps on the roof. Actual footsteps. Slow walking sounds directly above us. Kayla nearly had a panic attack. I remember standing there holding the knife like an idiot, knowing it wouldn't help if somebody really wanted inside. Finally, police arrived. 3 deputies searched the property with flashlights. One eventually came back looking serious. He asked if we had checked the garage recently. I said no. He told us to come outside carefully. The garage door was open now. Inside smelled horrible. One deputy pointed his flashlight toward the back corner. There was a mattress on the floor, water bottles, food wrappers, blankets. Someone had been living in there, probably for a while. Kayla started crying harder immediately, but the worst part came next. The deputy asked if either of us owned the Polaroid photos they found hanging on the garage wall. We didn't. There were dozens of them. Pictures of the house, pictures of the driveway, pictures of us unloading the car when we first arrived, pictures of Kayla sitting outside by the pool earlier that day. Whoever had been staying there had apparently been watching us since we arrived. Maybe longer. One of the deputies quietly asked the others to search the desert area again. They found footprints leading into the hills behind the property, but nobody ever found the man. The deputies strongly recommended we leave immediately. We packed everything in under 10 minutes. While grabbing our bags from the bedroom, I noticed something on the nightstand beside my side of the bed. A small photograph. It hadn't been there before. It was a Polaroid picture of the house taken from outside at night. And standing in the bedroom window was me, sleeping. To this day, I still cannot explain how someone got inside without waking us up. The police believed the man had probably entered earlier while we were gone and hidden somewhere on the property. They thought he may have been living in the garage for weeks using empty Airbnbs when nobody rented them. Apparently that happens more often in remote vacation homes than people realize. We got a full refund from Airbnb, but honestly I didn't care about the money. For months afterward, I barely slept normally. Every tiny noise outside my apartment made me look out the window. And even now, years later, I still check closets, bathrooms, and garages anytime I stay somewhere unfamiliar. Because the scariest part of that whole experience wasn't knowing someone was outside watching us. It was realizing he had already been inside while we slept.